It's a great pleasure to be here to celebrate many things, the 200th anniversary of the Humboldt-University, and walking down the Unter den Linden to come here, I noticed that there's a special dispensation for the Humboldts, that in front of the university, the two statues are enclosed in an indoor environment, so they need not be facing the cold. And I think that's only proper. I want to add my congratulations to the von Bortkiewicz professor and just say a brief word about him. I have no prepared remarks, but in most of the statistical world, there is one small thing that everybody knows about von Bortkiewicz, and that is his famous data set on deaths by horse kick in the Prussian cavalry. It is a wonderful data set. It is evocative. Just looking at the titles of the columns, you get a picture in your mind of awful things happening. And every student knows it, every professor knows it. But not everybody knows how hard he had to work to get those data. You may imagine that he just happened to be walking through some statistical bureau and he saw this table on a table and said, oh, well, that's nice, I think I'll use it. But no. Statisticians should know that data of that quality do not come that easily. In the time covered by those data in the around 1880s, 1870s, the Prussian state statistics were published each year in 3 huge volumes. To get one line of his data, you must locate in one of those 3 volumes the right place, the right column, and then copy it out. He spent a lot of trouble on that data set, and it was worth it. I would like to tell you I'm going to be talking on some reflections on speculation and statistics. I really have 2 stories I want to tell, 2 stories that are separate, but I want to argue are related. One will be more of a preamble and also a postscript. I'll be returning to it at the end. It's specifically on speculation. The other story will be a little longer, and it will involve some characters that are probably not always a part of the discourse here at Case. One of them is Charles Darwin. One of them is Francis Galton. And I believe I will be telling you something new, a new discovery about the history of a major development in our science. And I want to try and also relate that discovery to the science of finance, the science of speculation. But I'm going to begin by going back to an earlier time and tell you just a little bit about the ancient history, not quite so ancient history of speculation. Now, I'm not going to try to give a history of finance or speculation. It's just much too large a topic. It is one that, if you wish, you could read in the literature of the history of probability. There's an excellent book by Lorraine Daston of the Max Planck Institute, which has a wonderful set of coverage on the history of insurance, which is, after all, nothing more than speculation and risk and the like. I'm not going to discuss that. I strongly recommend it to all readers. I want to only give just one example of the sort of thing that I have in mind by pointing at 2 obscure, and I really do mean obscure, pamphlets that appeared in the early 1800s. And one of them will lead me into the story that I want to tell you. But they do emphasize the fact that people have been thinking explicitly about speculation for some time. The pamphlet on the left is of really no considerable importance. It's a small pamphlet on précis de spéculation, speculaire, and it discusses particularly how to speculate, or not how to, but the speculation of, on public funds. This was very much in the minds of people in the period just after Napoleon. The little pamphlet itself is not important. It's mostly a set of definitions, of terms, and explanations. If one were to look there for a mathematical theory of finance, one would be gravely disappointed. But it does point to the subject being on people's minds. It's the second work, or rather the author of the second work, that I want to begin with. The second work is by Joseph Nicolas Nicolay. He is probably as an obscure a person as the history of science has to offer. If there is anyone here who has heard of Nicolay before, I would be surprised. Not entirely appalled and shocked, but surprised. As far as I know, this is almost the only thing he ever published. And yet, he was a very good mathematical astronomer. He worked he was born in Savoy. Only one picture survives. I'll show it to you in a moment. He graduated in 1811 from the École Normale, and he worked at the Paris Observatory subsequent to that. He was a favorite of Laplace. And in those days, if you were the favorite of Laplace, you had a job. And he held that job until Laplace died in 1827, when the fact that he was not a favorite of some other people did not work in his favor. Now, he must have worked with Bouvard on the compilation of tables. He must have met Quetelet during Quetelet's visit to the Paris Observatory in the 1820s. And he did visit London, we know. But the basic facts of his life are fairly obscure. But one thing that I wanted to tell you about is that he did indulge in speculation. This particular pamphlet is on the application of probability to life insurance, and I imagine it's hard to read the footnote, but it does say this pamphlet is extracted from an unpublished treatise. Well, that treatise remained unpublished, and I know of no surviving fraction of it, so we will never know whether he gave the entire history of financial derivatives and the theories of how to invest in interest rates. He might have foreseen the entire last 10 years of our financial history, but I don't think so. What he did do, though, was he invested and he speculated, and as far as I can make out, it was not only with his own money. Now, as we know, that can be dangerous. It is wonderful when things go well. It is not so wonderful when things don't go well. And in fact, he was, I believe, primarily doing this in the years after Laplace's death, 1827. And in particular, on July 26, 1830, there was a crisis. And it was a government crisis, but it was a personal crisis for Nicolay. The bonds fell 4 points in a day, and he was ruined. This sort of thing is commonplace these days, but in 1830 it was quite a surprise. He was ruined, and I don't think he was very popular with his friends whose money he'd been helping to invest. He tried